Lacrosse community, my name's Ryan Berns. I'm the founder of the Lacrosse Leadership Institute. It's our mission to empower all those that love lacrosse, to recognize the skills you gain from the sport, to ultimately live your best life possible. Today, we're so fortunate to be joined by Ryder Bohlander, former University of Maryland defenseman, and also a head coach of Manhattanville College in New York. Ryder, we're so excited to have this conversation with you today. For those in our community that aren't quite aware of your story, can you share a little bit about your background? How'd you get into lacrosse?
Sure. Just want to say thank you for having me, Ryan. And, just to start, so, I grew up in a small community in Westchester County, New York, went to John Jay Cross River High School. And, lacrosse has always been popular in New York. Long Island is known for having great teams, and they have for a really long time. Westchester County certainly produced some really good lacrosse teams and players. And John Jay, when I was little, started to get pretty competitive. And we had a big rival, Yorktown High School, that had won multiple state championships, had produced a lot of All-Americans that, did really big things at the college level. So it was kind of cool playing the underdog for a while, especially when we got up into, playing varsity lacrosse. And we actually beat Yorktown for the first time in a section championship my junior year. That was thrilling for us. It was a nice little payday for us because, we had a group of guys that had worked really hard, played a ton of sports, which we'll, get into later on in this conversation. But just, it was, when you talk about lacrosse and what it meant to me and why I fell in love with the sport, I'm very good family friends with a big lacrosse family, the Bocklet family, and very close with Chris Bocklet, who I guarded multiple times at UVA as a defender for the University of Maryland. We actually I guarded him in the national championship in 2011. And unfortunately, they beat us 9-7, but to be able to play in front of 40,000 people was a pretty special moment for both of us. They were a big reason why I got interested in lacrosse as early as I did, about third grade. That's when I first picked up a stick. But as far as, when I ended up making the decision to play lacrosse, I was pulled up to play varsity lacrosse in 8th grade. So I had played baseball and lacrosse up until that point. When, I was in 7th grade, I played both. And I got the call from the head coach. I had to pass a couple tests, like a pull-up test, a push-up test, just basic, strength stuff to make sure I could play at the varsity level. But that essentially made my decision for me. And I had to stop playing baseball at that point. My whole family was a baseball family. They all played baseball. So I was a little bit of the black sheep. But they had so much fun kind of traveling to my games and watching me play down at Maryland and how well we did in high school. So I made them believers in the sport of lacrosse by the time I was finished.
Oh my gosh. I think that's such a neat opportunity where you have great friends that get you into the sport. You have that opportunity to play multiple sports, and we know how important multi-sport athletes are. And then you take the opportunity to just focus on something as you approach high school. And it sounds like you've always been the pound for pound. Is it the Iron Horse that you were at Maryland, or what was that award junior year?
My junior year, I won the Iron Terp Award, which means that basically, they take your body weight and factor it into a formula where they take your max bench press, max deadlift, max squat, and max clean. And, they figure out who was a pound for pound strongest person on the team that year. And that was an honor. It's, that's an award that I think you can hold your chest up a little bit higher around the locker room when you win that. So that was that was fun.
Oh, that's so cool. And then I saw the next year then as a senior, you got the Big Man Award. Can you share a little bit about that?
That's a special one. Coach Dick Adele, a beloved head coach for the University of Maryland, the late 90s, early 2000s. If you talk to anybody in the lacrosse world throughout that time that knew him, that had any sort of contact with Coach Adele, I challenge you to find someone with something negative to say about the guy. He was just epitomized what it meant to be a leader, a positive leader, a great team member, because that's what you are as a coach. You are a member of that team, and it's important that you're setting the tone for how you want your teammates treating each other, and how those relationships are formed, and just how important it is to the people in that group. And he epitomized that. That's why that award goes to essentially the best teammate every year, voted on by the coaching staff. So that was a special one. And just kind of what he represented in the lacrosse community in general. I take a lot of pride in winning that award my senior year.
Wow. I think that's such a cool award, because we know how important it is to be a strong teammate, and it's recognition from your peers and coaches that say, hey, Ryder, you really deserve this at the end of the day. Is that a pinnacle moment for you, or what's your pinnacle moment when you look back at your lacrosse career or coaching career?
I've been blessed to have, essentially when I started playing in third grade, lacrosse has been a part of my life from third grade until, this past year when I actually decided to go in a different direction, and we will, we can get into that a little bit later. But lacrosse had been such a huge part of my life, and there's a reason why I decided to coach this sport and coach at the college level, because of the effect, the positive effect it had on me, and just the influence that you can have over a lot of young men's lives, and helping them, navigate growing up, becoming a man, and entering the workforce in the real world. And just having that opportunity was so cool and so transformational at a very early age. I took over at Manhattanville College when I was 25 years old. And I was not ready for that responsibility at the time, but I had enough self-awareness that it made me grow up really fast. And I was fully aware of the influence that I had day one. And, in the back of my mind, I think anybody in that position for the first time thinks, what did I do to deserve this level of respect that all of these guys have for me right off the bat? And I think that's a really important thing to understand as a coach is, you are cast into a position that these, whatever it is, if you're coaching youth lacrosse players, men, women, at any age, they're going to listen to what you say. You have influence over them, and they are going to, give you the benefit of doubt. And it's important to understand that. So you are aware of every decision you're making, every point you're making, every lesson, and how you're spinning the day-to-day, which at the college level can be very monotonous. And it's not the easiest thing in the world to continue to motivate young men day in and day out in February and January up in New York, when it's 20 degrees outside, 30 degrees outside, to work as hard as they possibly can and prepare for games in April. That's a hard thing to do day in and day out, but it's all about perspective. And being able to prepare and work hard and enjoying that camaraderie of being around a group of guys that you're not going to be able to spend every day with in a really short period of time. College careers and high school careers go by really fast, and it is a lot of fun to look back on it and say it was pretty cool getting 2 hours, 3 hours in college, sometimes 6 hours a day, and you're living with your college roommates a lot of the times. To be able to do that for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years is really special. And a lot of people look back on that time and say, I made some of my best friends during those years and developed relationships that I'll have for the rest of my life. And that was one of my motivations to, coach at the college level, was because of the relationships that I developed. And I realized how special they were and how important they were to me personally, that, I wanted to help people develop those for themselves.
So it sounds like you wanted to make sure that the young men at Manhattanville had the same college experience you did, where they could become strong leaders moving forward, or just they could become adults. They could join society. They could make friendships that would last forever. And it was the impact lacrosse had had on your life that really inspired you to take that step as a coach.
For sure. You can develop a lot of confidence competing at a really high level. I know it might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but you're going to fail a lot more than you succeed if you compete at a high enough level. You're going to be humbled a lot more times than you ever thought you would. And what's so important about that is continuing to trust, right, that you're making the right decisions day in and day out, that eventually it's going to pay off in one way or another. And I think it's really important that coaches and at any level, players, that you're setting realistic goals for yourself and not outcome-based goals, right? I want to score 30 goals my senior year. And as a freshman, that goal is not going to help you get there. It's, okay, even if I do want to score 30 goals or be an All-American by the time I'm a senior, how am I going to get there? Right now, my stick work isn't where it needs to be. I'm undersized. I'm not fast enough just yet. I'm not strong enough. How am I going to get to that spot? And it's a matter of day to day, the mundane, waking up at a decent hour. And this is going to sound very, cliche to a lot of young players out there, but it's the truth. Most players eventually figure this out throughout their college careers, but the kids that end up doing it early on in their career, right, will generally be on a much steeper trajectory as far as how quickly they improve and learn how to be a college athlete, or learn how to be a varsity athlete, or learn how to be, make whatever club team that they might be striving to make. And that doesn't happen overnight. But to be able to work hard, chip away at that, and get even close to what your ultimate goal might be, you're going to be so proud of yourself, and you're going to be more confident as an individual, because you know deep down how much tough, boring sometimes work you put into this, and reaping the rewards of that is what it's all about. Having that perspective of, I'm not going to be a professional lacrosse player and make millions of dollars. I'm going to, move on and be a great teammate, whether that's with my family or in a business that you start, or as a colleague early on, working for a company. All of these skills, it's about being a good teammate. It's about helping the team succeed, putting what your personal, sometimes it's setting your personal well-being aside slightly, and trying to think big picture here. And if you do that enough, the people around you are going to respond to that, and they're going to go to bat for you. They're going to advocate for you. They're going to be your number one resources moving forward. And how many people you have a positive influence on is going to directly correlate with just how impactful your life is going to be.
Oh, I love that. And you talked about when you took on the role at Manhattanville, not sharing how you deserved it in the first place, Ryder. But I think these are part of what we all go through. It's failing a lot, being humbled, but knowing that you're doing the right thing. And I think that's what builds the self-confidence. And when you have a support system surrounding you, whether it's your family, your friends, your coaches, and they all go, hey, you got this. This is where you are. This is where you want to go. This is the strategy to get there. Yeah, it sucks waking up at 5 a.m. every morning and hitting the gym, hitting the field, and you feel like you're not making any progress. But we know it just takes time and time and time. And then you look back, 4 years flies by like that, and you go, man, I miss those 5 a.m. workouts. I miss getting up 4:30 and just trying to do all of this. And I think ultimately, though, Ryder, we see that experience built you into who you are today, and the idea of being the best teammate is something that goes to every aspect of life, which I love in terms of being family, being in the office, or whatever that looks like. We can always think of the greater good, and I think we can align our goals with the greater good as well. So it is in all of our interests to be successful. But I want to hear from you, Ryder. What does leadership mean to you?
It means service. The best leaders are people that are going to put their team first always. And, sometimes that means, just like you had said, it's making sure you're the best version of yourself, taking care of yourself, whether that's mentally, physically, getting a decent night's sleep. Make sure you're fully focused, aware, able to give your all. And sometimes that is, looking after yourself, but ultimately it's making sure your priorities are in line with the team. And you see that across all sports, where some of the best teammates, if you talk to, any team, and if you had the opportunity to, talk to coaches, talk to captains, a lot of captains that are voted on by their teammates aren't necessarily the most talented players. They're the players that their teammates respect the most. Maybe they get the most out of themselves. Maybe they started at a place that no one thought they could be successful and just showed up every single day. They're reliable. They were dependable. All of those characteristics are stuff that is important for you for the rest of your life. And, leadership is getting everybody to believe in you. It's getting everybody to believe that, even though you might be hard on someone, or even though you might tell somebody not what they want to hear in a moment, but what they need to hear, they deep down, it might hurt. They might, you might get in a little bit of an argument at the time, and then people might get defensive. That's okay. I promise you, if you consistently, if your head's in the right spot and your team trusts you and you have enough credit built up over making sure you're there for them in other moments, right? They're going to take that to heart and understand, say, hey, you know what, that might have hurt my feelings a little bit, or that might have been a really tough pill to swallow. I respect where coach is coming from, and I respect that. I trust that there's a method to his madness here, and they're going to keep believing in you. And they're going to keep believing in the greater good, in what this team is trying to accomplish, and that, whatever coach asked me to do here, this is in the long run going to be the best for the team. And then it really is up to each individual player and each leader to figure out what exactly they're going to get out of that circumstance, right? Perspective. Because the truth is, and this is a hard fact for a lot of college players, high school players to truly understand, is you could do everything the right way. If you're competing at a high enough level, that will not guarantee you playing time. It just won't. There's only so many starting spots on a roster. There's so much more time that you spend being a part of the team in other ways, in the weight room, whether that's whatever role you're asked to play, to be a just great bench guy who has a ton of energy, is always positive, or someone who's playing a scout team role, right? It's pretty cool if you're the attackman that's always the other team's best offensive player, and you're making your best defensive player better every single day, throughout the week, preparing for these big games. Take pride in that role. Take pride in every single role that you're asked to do, and don't get discouraged if, maybe you had this long-term goal that was outcome-based early on in your career, if it doesn't end up panning out, because that's not guaranteed. No one deserves that. Everyone that's a part of this team, right, deserves an opportunity, but there's only so many opportunities to go around. And what's really sad, and I hate to see it, and it does happen, is when somebody looks back on 4 years and say, you know what, I wish I had just sat back and worked hard, but also enjoyed that a little bit more, as opposed to, focusing on all outcome based. How many goals did I score? What position, why wasn't I starting, or why wasn't, stop trying to figure out what exactly the coach is trying to do, and just enjoy it. Trust that if you're going about yourself the right way, right? Getting good grades, treating your teammates well, working hard in the weight room, listening and learning to the coaching staff about how they want you to play the sport. Because there are so many ways to go about this, that there are plenty of players that maybe aren't quite as talented as somebody, but know exactly where to be, when to be there, know exactly what the coach is asking of them, and fill a role and end up being really productive in that role. So being able to help the team in any way you can, and finding a role for yourself, especially the higher up you go and the more competitive this becomes, it is up to you to find out how you can help that team. And I promise you, the coach is going to love that. If you're finding a role and filling a void that that team needs, you are going to eventually find a way to be productive for that team. And I promise you, in the long run, that's all anyone is looking to be. It's productive. You're going to be proud of yourself for that, and you're going to feel like you've really accomplished something.
I think the big idea of being productive and the perspective that you can do everything right and still not hit the field are two things I want to highlight, because it's so hard. You got to check your ego at the door when you feel like you're doing everything you can, you're still not playing. You're building up rapport with coach. You're trying to find anything you can. But like you said, you have to be opportunistic. You have to see where there's voids on the team. And I think that's ultimately something that comes over to the real world. Once you get into a professional setting in a large company, a small team, whatever it may be, you have to identify opportunities, and nothing's handed to any of us. We don't deserve anything. It's just trying to show up and deliver more value than the other people around us. And at the end of the day, we're going to be looking in a mirror and saying, hey, am I comfortable with myself? Do I like what I'm doing? Am I happy? And hopefully we can do that. And I like that perspective of enjoying the journey that you brought up, Ryder, because it, again, goes so quickly. And just like this conversation is going so fast. And I know we have to wrap things up pretty soon. But do you have any last thoughts on, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what the current youth can do to play at the highest level they want to. And let's start with that.
Just like I mentioned previously about finding a role for yourself and being a good teammate, and that's basically what your team needs you to be. When you're going through the youth level and learning how to essentially play the game of lacrosse, it all boils down, just like in the college level, is you have to have a good foundation. You have to have good fundamentals. And yes, wall ball is important, okay? Being able to throw and catch and is going to make your life a lot easier on the lacrosse field, but it makes it a lot more fun when you have a group of maybe 2, 3, 4 guys that you can get creative with games, so you're not bored about this, right? And we used to play games like it's a little bit of an ultimate frisbee, but with lacrosse, where it was when I was in 4th and 5th grade, we would just go out on the playground, throw a lacrosse ball around, and if you caught the ball in the end zone, it'd be a touchdown. And you had to kind of work your way up the field, where you can get creative with your friends and still work on your stick work and get really good at lacrosse without just 100 reps against the wall. Stick work's important, and this is going to come with a little bit of a caveat here, because weight training, you can hurt yourself if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have a good coach that's giving you a good foundation or a good base to start from. But you have to lift weights, especially if you're getting into into high school. If you're mature enough by the time you're in 8th grade, it's going to help you avoid injury. It's going to make you stronger, faster, protect yourself, and you're going to have a head up on everybody else, because when you do get to college, you're going to lift every single day. And it's not just about becoming big and strong. It's about avoiding injuries, about stability, making sure you have good ankle support, making sure your knees are supported, making sure your neck is strong so you're not getting concussions all the time. All of that really does matter, because ultimately, if you're not on the field, you're not helping your team. And there are going to be situations that you're put in a lacrosse field that you just couldn't avoid. It's a physical sport, and injuries do happen, but there is a little bit you can do about it. And all of it is not totally out of your control. So and that's ultimately going to make you a more confident player and a more confident person. Becoming bigger and stronger will make you more confident, and you'll have a more of a belief in yourself, which is really powerful. running on the side and being able to run all day and being in better shape, than your teammates and ultimately the people that you're competing against is going to make you more confident. All this extra stuff you're doing outside is going to make you more confident on the field. And you can tell when a player at any level has been working or doing a little bit extra or has that confidence. They move a little bit faster, they're more decisive in what they're doing, in their decision making, and it all matters. So any way that you can find a way to gain an edge on your competition, just do it and do it every single day. A little bit. It doesn't have to be crazy. And if you haven't really been doing much, start small, twice a week, once a week. Eventually it'll build up and pay off. Doesn't have to happen overnight, but if you stick to it, regardless of how good you get, you're going to appreciate that process, and you can carry that over into learning any new skill, a new job, anything, building something, on your first house, all that stuff. Just, all right, I need to watch some YouTube videos here. I need to, practice with a hammer. I need to just, all of these little things. Learning a new skill is learning a new skill, and learning and going through that growth process of being a beginner to an intermediate to a master is so important, so valuable, and eventually extremely rewarding as long as you stick to it and kind of work through being a beginner and work through failure and work through being uncomfortable. It's going to pay off, and you're going to get a lot from that.
Absolutely. Ryder, thanks so much for that thought. We're all beginners at some time, and we just have to continue to work out. Do you have any last thoughts on lacrosse or leadership you can share with the community?
Just appreciate you having me tonight, and remember to enjoy it. I always tell this to my guys, perspective is everything. And I hate to see kids too hard on themselves. Granted, it's great to see that they care and that, they care about outcomes and their team being successful. That's positive, but you don't want to be self-indulgent with that. You don't want to beat yourself up to the point where it's discouraging you, because ultimately, and I tell this to my guys all the time, no one's going to remember how many goals you scored April 22nd against so-and-so opponent, or if you tripped and fell, and no one's going to care about that. Your friends are going to be your friends, your teammates. You're going to be spending time with them and keeping in touch with them for the rest of your life. That's the most important part. So yes, pressure is good, and it's good to take things seriously, but if you overindulge there, you're gonna feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders with every single pass, every shot, every ground ball, and it's not conducive to success. Okay, as long as if you keep a good head on your shoulders and keep perspective on everything you're doing, understand, yes, lacrosse matters, it's important. It is still a vehicle, the game, to help you become the best version of yourself. So keep positive perspective. Don't get hung up on one missed ground ball. Just get the next one. Maybe put in a little bit of extra work outside, and I promise you everything will work out.
Oh, awesome. Ryder, thank you so much for spending your evening with us today. We thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Best of luck to everybody.